This is a first-person account from a self-proclaimed time traveler from the year 2345, who has journeyed back to 2023 with a dire warning and a morally compromising mission. I am a time traveler from the year 2345. I am so sorry for what is coming. Let me start by acknowledging that none of you are likely to believe me. At this point in time, the concept of time travel is only just beginning to be taken seriously by the scientific community, slowly moving away from being a shunned idea. Furthermore, the internet, especially platforms like Reddit, are filled with individuals who merely role-play as time travelers. Regardless of your belief, I assure you I am genuine. I will not disclose my real name, as my past self is currently alive in 2023, and I cannot risk altering history. Nor will I delve into detailed information about the future concerning politics or other sensitive topics, so please do not ask. However, I can offer a few vague details that may lend credibility to my claims over time, hopefully convincing the right people that my warning is real. A glimpse of the future, 2023 to 2345. In less than 2 or 3 decades from now, humanity will achieve remarkable medical breakthroughs. Cures for cancer and other debilitating diseases will be discovered and administered via simple vaccine shots. The pandemic you are currently experiencing actually accelerated their development. Furthermore, death itself will become more of a choice than an inevitability. Life extension research will lead to the ability to live for centuries, if not longer, while retaining youthful bodies indefinitely. Many of you reading this may still be alive in my time. I personally embrace these therapies once the initial bugs were resolved. Imagine having the body of your 20s combined with the vast knowledge and wisdom accumulated over centuries, and the freedom to pursue experiences a single natural lifetime wouldn't allow. While initially met with resistance from those wary of living beyond a natural lifespan, these advancements eventually transformed society. By the halfway point of this century, gasoline will be banned. However, synthetic fuels will ensure that people are not forced into electric cars, which delighted me as it meant I could continue driving my Cadillac DeVille. Towards the end of the 21st century, flying cars will become a craze, though I preferred to remain grounded. Mid-air accidents, I assure you, are not pretty. Space travel, however, truly took off after the Artemis missions returned humans to the moon within a few years of your current time. Once the moon base and spaceport were constructed, it was a race from there. Vacations to planets like Mars and moons such as Europa and Titan will become regular occurrences, accessible even to those of moderate wealth. As for time travel, it proved more challenging than anticipated. Extensive discussions took place as the idea gained scientific traction, not just for travel to the future, already possible through time dilation, but to the past. It became a global race, reminiscent of the space race of the 1960s, with every nation striving to be etched into history for achieving time mastery. Yet the urgency that once defined human endeavors lessened, as scientists could now work much longer, without the immediate specter of retirement or death. During this early period, I was not personally involved in the time travel pursuits. I had fundamentally transformed my life upon realizing my extended lifespan. I built a formidable existence, becoming a best-selling author and an explorer who conquered Mount Everest on Earth and Olympus Mons on Mars. My vast wealth, derived from writing and other business ventures, allowed me to construct elaborate underwater cities, strikingly similar in design to Rapture from the BioShock video game. I lived a vibrant and fulfilling life from the latter half of the 21st century until the mid-23rd. The pursuit of a dream. However, one lingering aspiration persistently tugged at my mind. I had accomplished so much, checking countless items off my bucket list, yet one remained unfulfilled. Time travel. Indeed, if you guessed my desire was to journey through time, then congratulations, you've just won a trip for 2 to Europa. Ever since my childhood at the turn of the 20th and 21st centuries,
I dreamed of visiting the past. I yearned to attend the 9th annual Cannes Film Festival in 1956, to witness Jacques Cousteau's The Silent World win the Golden Palm Award, to see extinct animals like the Barbary lion and the Tasmanian tiger, and to traverse the oceans aboard old ocean liners, such as the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. These were just a few of my initial desires. This deep-seated longing became the leverage for my substantial investment in the research. A venture capitalist, whom I'll call Reynolds for the sake of this narrative, approached me as one of his first major investors. He had heard me express my desire to time travel during my book tours. I had even written an entire book series centered around the concept. Thus, when he called me that day, I immediately sat up, captivated. "Son," he said, from the video screen on my desk, a smile spreading across his face, "I've known for a long time now that you want to visit the past. Well, what if I told you that we are the closest to actually achieving it? And if you're willing to invest a little time and money into my project, I will allow you to become one of the first to actually travel to the past." I leaned forward in my chair. "Then I would say you now have my attention, Mr. Reynolds." From that moment, I was completely committed. I was brought to his laboratory, where I was genuinely shocked to discover he wasn't exaggerating. His team was closer to mastering time travel than any of the hundreds of other governmental or private entities attempting it. Even to me, the science was extraordinarily complex, but I will try to explain his discovery in layman's terms. Many scientists in your current century hypothesize that nearing a black hole would cause time dilation. 1 year near its edge could equate to 80 years on Earth. This phenomenon was definitively proven in 2190 when a space exploration mission, launched at the beginning of the 21st century, returned with its crew looking precisely as they had almost a century prior. There is also a theory that black holes could operate in reverse, functioning as wormholes to both teleport and send people back in time. The challenge was that this would require a particle accelerator almost 1 billion kilometers long and a stable wormhole, both of which were considered near impossibilities, until Reynolds' discovery. They not only managed to use a much smaller particle accelerator, but also successfully created an artificial wormhole, a man-made black hole, within their lab. Naturally, many, including myself, were deeply concerned. I questioned Reynolds about safeguards to prevent the artificial black hole from growing uncontrollably. He gestured upward at the particle accelerator suspended from the ceiling. "Victor, my boy, the particle accelerator has over 90 million sensors monitoring the hole. If they detect any anomaly or rapid growth beyond our parameters, it'll trigger an emergency shutdown that will zap the hole into non-existence." He clapped me on the back. "You have nothing to be concerned about." I took him at his word. It was incredibly foolish of me to simply accept his reassurances. But I was blinded by our proximity to conquering not only space, but time itself. In the year 2338, we finally attempted our first use of the artificial wormhole to open a portal to the past. For a dry run, we decided to go back only a single year. Scientists, other investors, and even the janitorial staff crowded into the lab's viewing area, anxious to see if the work, which had cost trillions of dollars in literal centuries, would finally pay off. And it did. To our utter shock and amazement, the wormhole opened. Through the glass, we could see a clear image of the lab as it had appeared at that exact time the previous year. But what truly made our jaws drop was seeing ourselves. I watched my past self being led around the chamber by Reynolds and his team, detailing the very advancements whose results we were now witnessing. I turned to Reynolds, seeing him gaze at the sight with profound pride and accomplishment. A grin spread across my own face. "It's actually possible," I thought ecstatically. "After so many centuries of hoping, it's actually fucking possible." Reynolds turned to me, his smile even wider than mine, if that was conceivable. "Now, do you believe me, Victor?" he asked. For a moment, complete stillness held the viewing area, and then everyone erupted in cheers and applause. We shook hands and embraced, congratulating ourselves on achieving what no one else had. Reynolds then instructed us to keep what we had witnessed under wraps, planning to reveal our achievement at an upcoming scientific convention in a few years. We were too giddy, too engrossed in our own glory, to pause and consider the implications of such a decision. Concepts like safety protocols and proper procedures never crossed our minds. That mistake was not only the first major one, but the worst. I don't believe what would happen next would have occurred if we had revealed our findings then and there. We encountered several snags afterwards. We could easily open a wormhole to a few years, or even a few decades back. Going back a century and a half required a bit more energy, but was still doable. Traversing from the present through the wormhole to the past and returning
was also manageable. We even created a portable version of the particle accelerator and wormhole, allowing us to move from the present into the past. Theoretically, you could use the portable pad to keep hopping further and further back in time. However, returning to the present always required the main unit. No one could engineer a way to return using only the portable pad. The further into the past one wished to travel, the more energy was consumed, and the larger the wormhole needed to be to traverse such a long distance. The particle accelerator occasionally shorted out, forcing us to limit our explorations until repairs could be made. One of the investors, Travis, approached me after a meeting with Reynolds in the spring of 2345 to voice his concerns. What worries me is that if he attempts to open a portal too far back in time at once, it may short out the safeguards, Vic, he whispered, glancing around to ensure he wasn't overheard. Reynolds had put most of us on edge recently. If I was fixated on visiting the past, he was utterly obsessed. He never explicitly stated his reasons, but an old photo of him and his mother, who had passed centuries ago, offered a small clue to his motives. Whenever we voiced concerns now, instead of his usual placating replies and reassurances, he would snap, appearing almost on the verge of violence. Honestly, I worry about it too. But what can we do? I whispered back. Nobody besides us knows how far along we are, and if we even try to mention anything to anyone outside of our group, God only knows what he'll do, especially with the reveal less than 2 months away. Travis took a deep breath. I don't care. This is far too dangerous to keep hidden any longer. Someone has to tell someone outside. With that, he turned and walked away. I watched him go, unaware that a tiny remote security bug had been observing us from behind before scurrying away. I pondered his words for about a month and a half, unsure of what to do. Finally, with only a few days remaining until the world reveal, I decided to return to the lab and speak to Reynolds. Unlike the others, he was still somewhat friendly with me, and I felt he might still trust me enough to listen. I entered the lab using my personal keycard, noting that he wasn't in his office. However, I could tell he had been there recently. The coffee warmer on his desk still glowed faintly red, and steam still rose from the cup beside it. I turned and headed for the observation area. As I drew closer, I heard voices. I couldn't distinguish them yet, but I slowed as I heard what sounded like angry, almost frantic pleadings from one. I froze, feeling a chill run up my spine. Had someone broken into the lab? I looked down, spotting a discarded metal pipe from a recent repair job, and picked it up. Feeling every muscle in my body tense, I pressed the button to open the pneumatic doors into the observation room and slid inside. No one was there, but I could now tell the voices were emanating from the main room itself. I crouch-walked to the glass and slowly peeked over it. What I saw made me nearly drop the pipe. Reynolds stood in the room, almost directly under the particle accelerator. Around him were about 10 or 12 of his personal security team. That wasn't the worst sight, though. Oh God. Travis lay on an old medical gurney, the kind one might use in 20th century mental hospitals. His arms and legs were strapped tightly, and he struggled in vain to free himself from the restraints. The intercom into the room had been left on, and I could now clearly hear the conversation. "Listen, Reynolds," he shouted. "You don't know what you're doing. The wormhole is too unstable to demonstrate before a crowd, especially since you want to open it so far back in time at once. You don't know what'll happen." For a moment, Reynolds remained silent. Then he began to chuckle. It wasn't a normal laugh. It sounded utterly insane. I've watched, quite literally, millions of horror movies in my lifetime and heard countless insane, evil laughs. Hearing one for real, however, made me shudder. He then spoke softly back to Travis, too low for me to hear. But whatever he said caused a look of complete horror to fall over Travis's face. Oh God," Travis moaned. A wave of dread coursed through me. Even without knowing Reynolds' words, I knew it was catastrophic. Reynolds patted Travis on the shoulder and finally said something I could make out. "You'll be the first, Travis, for my own eyes to see, before the big reveal, and nothing you, Victor, or anyone else can do is going to stop me." Then he began to walk towards the exit. "Goodbye, Travis," he said, and exited the lab. I knew where he was heading. The observation room. God only knows what he'd do if he found me there. There was only one door out of the room, and I knew it was too late to escape through it. The unhinged man was on his way, and he would surely see me. A rather large air duct with its cover-off for repairs caught my eye. I set down the pipe as I heard voices approaching the door. Before I climbed into the vent, one object caught my eye. Something slumped in a canvas bag. In the few seconds I had left, I snatched it up, then climbed onto the table in the middle of the room and finally into the vent.
I made it just in time. Less than a second later, I heard the pneumatic doors open, and through the opening, I saw Reynolds and his goons step in and approach the glass. A moment later, the lights in the lab began to flicker and dim. Horror, as palpable as I had ever felt, surged through me. He's turning on the particle accelerator to open the wormhole. Through the glass, I saw Travis struggle in vain to break free. Below me, I heard Reynolds let out a low, evil cuckle. Then he turned to the man to his left. "Do it," he said flatly. In response, the man slammed his meaty fist into a red button on the side of the wall. I had to slap both hands over my mouth to keep from screaming. Have you ever heard about something called spaghettification? It's what scientists both now and in the future call what happens when a black hole swallows an object in its path, be it a star, a planet, or in this case, a person. The wormhole opened, and as it did, Travis began to scream. It was the most pained, agonizing scream I have ever heard a human being make. As he was pulled towards the opening black hole, both he and the gurney began to stretch out and at the same time compress. It was as if he were Laffy Taffy being stretched and pulled by a machine. His scream became distorted, tinny, and rose several octaves. They say that if a human were sucked into a black hole, the process of spaghettification would be one of the most horrific, painful ways to die. I can confidently say they were utterly understating that hypothesis. For us, it was over in about 20 seconds. But I knew for Travis, those seconds had been an eternity of dying due to time dilation. The accelerator was turned off, and the black hole wavered for a moment before vanishing. When it was gone, Reynolds turned to his men. "Ready the plans and items needed for the world reveal. I want everything to be in place when it's time." One guard nodded. "Yes, sir, we'll have it all ready." The man I had once considered my partner and friend began to walk towards the door when the guard called after him. "And if Victor should come poking his nose around here while you're gone?" he asked. A fresh surge of fear and horror splashed through me as Reynolds answered the question. "Then end him the same way we did Travis. I won't have him interfering in this." "Actually," he held up a finger, "don't do that. Go out, after this, and find him. Put him on my personal jet and take him the farthest distance away. He deserves what's coming almost more than anyone else, and I want him to be one of the last to go." With that, he turned and strode out of the lab. I couldn't help but shake uncontrollably in the cramped metal space at his words as the guards gathered some papers and equipment, then left the lab. It took me a long time to climb down from that vent and sneak out of the lab. I was terrified of being caught at any moment, but I managed to escape unseen. I did not return to my home
or any of my homes across the world for that matter. I knew there would be men waiting for me at all of them. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in centuries. I returned to my poor and humble roots. I first withdrew all the money and gold I could from my bank accounts, knowing I would need it, and eventually took refuge in an extremely run-down motel in the city, one that advertised itself as an authentic early 20th century motel experience. It catered to technophobes, people who feared or hated technology and sought refuge when venturing out from their homes. While there, I frantically tried to contact anyone I could to warn them, especially after discovering a typed printed-out speech, something I hadn't seen in centuries, stuffed into a pocket of the canvas bag. Most of it related to the reveal speech, but the final part is what caused me to frantically call anyone in power. Even now, the words of it, what evolved into a twisted manifesto, still fill me with indescribable horror. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I must conclude this presentation with an admission. This device can, indeed, open a wormhole through time. It can allow humanity to traverse time and space, enabling us to move freely to the past and future at will. But that was merely a side effect. It was not what I secretly designed this machine for in the first place. You see, humanity as it is now is abhorrent. It's disgusting. An aberration. It has been, ever since I was a child and had my mother and father educate me on how evil a species we were. To the environment, to each other, and to the universe as a whole. They both became anti-natalists in their older age and passed those views on to me. At first, I didn't understand why they and those like them
wanted not just humans, but all sapient, sentient life to cease to exist. But as the centuries have passed, I've come to understand their views. Humans were never meant to live this long. Many of us, both here in the audience and watching at home, were never meant to live as long as we have. We all should have done the right thing and died a long time ago. It's disgusting to allow ourselves to live on. Every year I continued living was one I hated. But I know I'll never get the majority of others to agree with my views, our views, the anti-natalists. And so, in secret, I have worked with them for centuries on a final plan to make the choice for you, for all of us. None of you deserve to keep living beyond today. None of us either. All sapient, sentient life in the universe needs to do the right thing and cease to exist. And none of you deserves to be able to travel through time. This is the moment for humanity, for everything, to end. And it's too late to escape. May the universe be bettered by the erasure of all life. Goodbye. The aftermath and the final plan. Now, I should explain why I am telling you all of this, how I managed to travel back here, why I am revealing all these things. It is because I was unable to stop Reynolds. I tried desperately for days to reach anyone in the government, to warn them. I left message after message. But much like the government now, the futures bureaucracy was such a mess that either no one received my messages or they were dismissed as a hoax, at least not until it was far too late to intervene, because on August 17th, 2345, at exactly 2:30 in the afternoon, Reynolds walked onto the stage in front of millions of people at the remodeled Los Angeles Convention Center, with billions more watching worldwide. He unveiled his machine, which he had moved to the center from the lab, and proceeded exactly as the prepared speech had outlined. The world gasped, believing a new age in humanity's existence had dawned, the ability to not only reach the stars, but also the future and past. I watched it unfold on the ancient, barely functioning smart TV in my motel room as I frantically prepared. I witnessed the moment he launched into his manifesto speech. I saw the realization spread across the crowd, the looks of excitement and glee dissolving into existential dread and horror. A few tried to rush him to stop him, but his guards, whom I then realized were also anti-natalists, shot them.
It mattered not whether they were men or women. They were shot like rabid animals without remorse. And then Reynolds pulled the lever. The screens didn't remain active for long, nor did I linger to watch much, but the little I did witness will be burned into my memory for the rest of my existence. The black hole opened, growing rapidly, far more so than I had ever seen it do before. It was a runaway black hole, one that might never stop growing. I saw the beginning of millions of people undergoing spaghettification, the screams of pain and agony of millions of lives ending at once, for them drawn out into a literal eternity of horrific stretching and peeling into oblivion, must be what the deepest pits of hell, filled with the damned, sound like. Before the end of the day, Earth was gone, sucked into the ever-expanding black hole. Billions of lives were ended in the most horrific, painful way imaginable, with no way to even attempt to escape, as all of Earth was consumed by the event horizon. And for all I know, it kept growing. For all I know, it devoured the entire galaxy, and is now on its way to swallow the entire universe, ending every sapient, sentient thing in existence. I don't know. I never saw it. You see, the item I grabbed in that canvas bag that day, which lay alongside the copy of Reynolds' speech, was the portable pad. I suppose the maniac never considered it again, as he never intended for it to be properly used. As I witnessed the final few moments of his speech, I frantically typed a random date a century prior into the wrist-mounted destination selector. I barely managed to send myself back in time before Los Angeles was obliterated. It has taken me a while to make it all the way back here to 2023. I dared not jump more than a few decades at a time after that first massive jump. I was in uncharted waters, and I did not want to accidentally destabilize the wormhole and subject myself to the same fate that befell everyone else. And I discovered jumping back in time is physically draining. Thankfully, it doesn't cause adverse effects like cancer or tumors, but it does induce profound fatigue, leading to 2 or 3 days of continuous sleep. And I should explain why I am here in the first place. First, I must say I am so sorry. I am deeply sorry that I was so blind, so easily exploited for my money to enable such an evil plan. I am so sorry that, whether I intended it or not, I was a part of what happened. I am so sorry that, in my pursuit of a centuries-long dream, I allowed myself to become a pawn. But I have a plan to try and prevent that horrific, evil act, an act that makes all prior human atrocities seem like Tonka toys in comparison, from occurring. It will require a sacrifice from me, however. I believe it will cost me a piece of myself, a piece of my soul. You see, I won't be able to strike and try to kill Reynolds in his adulthood, due to the wealth and power he gained from his parents' fortune. I had already considered that when I landed back in the mid-23rd century. This means, much like what people here online spoke about wanting to do with other horrible, evil men, dictators, if they got their hands on time travel, No, I cannot bring myself to say it outright. Even for the most evil man in existence, I cannot explicitly state what I feel I must do in the way I must do it, and I know it will be one of the hardest things to live with once I've done it, but it must be done. I am only staying here another few weeks, just to take a final look at a time I had almost forgotten. So please, wish me luck, as morbid as that might be. I do need to warn you of one thing, though. One thing that worries me and scares me far more than any fictional monster or slasher ever could. There is one element of time travel that has been hypothesized but never proven, one that even after traveling through time, I do not know about, the theory of the multiverse. If someone were to travel back in time and alter the course of history in any large way, it is theorized that instead of the timeline they are on changing with it, a new, branching timeline would emerge, one where the change occurs while the original one continues exactly as it did.
The person who made the change would never know they were on the new, branching timeline. They couldn't. I pray to God, one whom I still believe in, but so many in my time stopped believing in long ago, that the multiverse theory is wrong. That when I do this, I will change this universe's fate, this timeline. But if it's right, I am so sorry for what is to come.